Sriram, Chairman and Senior Managing Director, DCM Sriram Limited, to kindly take the session forward.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Colleen Lalbhai, Vice Chairman, Arvind Limited from India. Mr. Madhav Singhania, Deputy Managing Director and CEO, JK Cement Limited. Mrs. Gitanjali Kirloskar, Chairperson and Managing Director, Kirloskar Systems Limited. Mr. Veer Advani, Chairman and Managing Director, Blue Star. Friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to this program. Thank you so much for coming today for this program. It's a privilege to extend a warm welcome to all of you for this important session on securing the future of family businesses, purpose-driven and responsible. We have, as you can see, a very distinguished panel who've been through and run family businesses successfully for many years and many generations. I think that's a great value add, which I'm sure they'll share their experiences of how they've been through it, what's gone right, what's gone wrong, and how to make sure that we move progressively for the future on the topic which we've chosen for today's discussion. Just briefly, I'll share that family businesses in India are small, medium, large, all sizes. Some of the larger ones, the largest ones are also family businesses. Some of the most profitable ones are also family businesses. So the scope and potential for making it purpose-driven, for making a responsible corporate citizen is very much there. I think we've seen family companies having rapid growth, moving forward quickly in an innovative way, with a lot of work going in to make sure what is the plan for the future. We've seen how they manage generations, different generations when they come in, how do they manage and have a smooth transition. And family companies also are absolutely world class. We are seeing that, whether it's the people they employ, whether it's the focus on processes and systems, or ERP packages or IT packages, etc., whether it's on the innovation and R&D front, a lot of effort goes in there too. And many of them are global corporates, conglomerates. So, they have the experience across the board of running family companies in an extensive, successful way. On today's topic of securing the future family business in a purpose-driven and responsible way, a couple of thoughts come to mind which I want to share. One, I think it's important to look at the issue of corporate governance in a company. Whether it's the laying down the objectives of the company, what are the visions of the company, what is the planning for the company, the difference between owners and owner-managers. I think that makes a difference as to how you actually run the company and set the values for the company. And one thing I would say, we are also from a family business. I think the biggest mistake family members can make if they feel they know it all. I think that is really a downward trend, because there are definitely more qualified and more intelligent and more successful people than each of us anywhere. So I think that's one thing which has to be looked at. Second is having a long-term vision and a long-term view. I think this is where there must be transparency between family members and the outside, so that there is trust which is built up over a period of time. Accountability has to be very clear. Being a family member does not mean that, God forbid, something goes wrong and you blame it on someone else. No. I'll give a small example. When I was in college, when I was in school actually, in Calcutta, I went to a friend's place whose father was running an air conditioning repair shop. So he once told me, he said, "Beta, when I have an issue, I speak to 3-4 people, get their views, then I decide what to do, but the decision I take is mine. I have to take responsibility for that decision. I can't turn around and say that he's told me and it's not happened, so it's his blame." No. I have to take responsibility. And I think that's very wise. At least I've learned that it's important to get clarity on that. Strategic planning for the future, that's also very crucial. It's required to be done to have a long-term vision for the group and the company. And I think a challenge which is there, which is being taken up by all families, is how to ensure smooth continuity across generations. I think that is something which is also very crucial and required to be addressed by members of the family. And again, experience I'm sharing, getting outside in input for some of these issues is very helpful, rather than feeling as a family we know it all again. So I think getting outside in input and experience of others can add tremendous value to that. I just want to say one more point is regarding communication between family members. I think that's absolutely essential. That's what builds trust. That's what builds a sense of comfort. As I've told my brothers also, I said, I may something you don't like. I'll say something you don't like. You may say something I don't like. If the intention is not wrong, it's okay. We are all human beings. The point is, how do we make sure that we can talk about it and put everything on the table? So I think that's where communication, to my mind, is absolutely essential. This helps in upholding values, upholding beliefs, upholding what you are working for, what is your position in the company, and how do you want to treat people in the company. I think that's a very key element. This is again, by communication, you are able to share each one's interests, what is your passion, what is your future thinking, your direction, where you want to go. I think some of these become very crucial. And last, to share on the topic of today, which is the purpose and responsibilities, I think family businesses more so have a much bigger responsibility than just running the company. They have a responsibility to society, near them, not so near them, and to the world. I think that's something which is absolutely crucial for companies, more so family companies. They have to be champions of the environment, social areas, and governance, the ESG factors. Sustainability is becoming a very major factor now. We are seeing what's happening with climate change. We are seeing how companies have to react and take steps which are more sustainable going down the line. Again, laying down the purpose and values becomes very important. Philanthropic endeavors and work, again, is something which is a responsibility of corporates. It's not only for the employees or the customers or the vendors or stakeholders or banks. It is a lot wider. I think this is where the responsible activity comes in. And as I put it, that ultimately we as family members are privileged to be in the position we are. How do we behave like trustees who's looking after the welfare of what we have in our responsibility today for the next generation? I think some of these areas are important to look at for taking the group forward. So these are some thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you and with all of you here on the dais. The topic is very interesting, and I'm sure all of you are looking forward to hearing our eminent speakers share their thoughts on this topic. So I'm going to now request each of you to kindly share for about 5 minutes some thoughts which you may have in general about the topic, and then after that I'll come down and ask some questions. Then we can get into a little Q&A. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sriram. Happy to be here to share thoughts with all of you. And perhaps I thought in my 5 minutes I could just share a little bit about our journey at Arvind. We are a little over 100-year-old as an institution. So I'm the 5th generation in this business. And I think as I look back and I think about what has helped us survive 100 years, I think there are two parts that I'd like to talk about. I think the first is this idea of what is the core value system and purpose of the organization. And I think from a young age, we were always told that creating shareholder wealth aside, I think the thing that we live for and what we are working towards is creating an institution that stands for something. And Mr. Sriram used the word trusteeship. I think that concept of trusteeship, at the core of it, is that the institution is more important than the individual. That, you know, you are here to contribute, to build an institution. The institution is larger than yourself. The institution lives by its own code, its own value systems. And your job is to leave the institution in a better shape than what you found it. So for us, you know, we've constantly lived with that credo. And for both my brother Puneet and I, our whole way of thinking is how can one become capable enough or prepare oneself to contribute to the institution. So it's not about the institution working for you, it's about how you work for the institution. So I think that's one thing that I believe the way we've grown up in our mental model. The other bit is, you know, Mr. Shriram also mentioned long-term thinking. I think one of the powers of family business is one can think how a business has to last a generation and not necessarily how it has to deliver the next quarter. The next quarter is important, but when the vision is long-term, I think the way an institution thinks, evolves and builds itself is very different. And in today's world of disruption, unless you change yourself every 10, 20 years, you will not survive, right? You need to disrupt yourself. So if I look back in Arvind's history, my father had to reinvent the company. We wouldn't be here if we hadn't pivoted away from traditional textiles and moved into denim in the 80s. Had we not pivoted away from just textiles and become a fashion powerhouse again, I don't think the company would be what it is today. And right now, as we see digital taking over, we're again disrupting ourselves completely and readying ourselves for the digital age. So I think this combination of living by deep values, having the humility to, you know, constantly learn, pivot and grow, the combination of this continuity and disruption and change is what I think our story has been. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is that, you know, we've always believed that in a country like India, companies need to do a lot more than just deliver numbers. I think companies have to be the force of positive change in society. So again, we've been always taught that companies have this unique power to make a positive change in the world. So be it the way we run our businesses, we've been sustainability conscious for the last 30 years, much before I think ESG became a requirement and a buzzword. And we've tried to shape our industry, you know, in terms of being possibly leading edge on sustainability. Similarly, the family has always been involved in education. For the last 60 years, some of the biggest institutions in our city of Ahmedabad we've been associated with. And the reason we feel we need to do that is that in India there's so much to be done that you cannot just leave it to the government to be able to bring about the change and opportunities for all the people around us. So I think companies, beyond delivering on the mandate of shareholder value, have to figure out what unique contribution they can make to all the stakeholders and also the society at large. So we hope that we can continue with that thinking, and as we are able to scale up and have more resources, the hope is we can continue to amplify the kind of efforts which we are doing outside of the business as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and the experience. I think it's good to know the way your family has gone.
Hello.
Gitanjali, can I request you to please share some thoughts?
Yes. Thank you, Ajay. I think like you and like the rest of the members, good afternoon firstly. I'm always worried when we have sessions between 12 and 3 because it moves to lunch and then peak hour of sleep for many people. So I hope that we can keep you energized, engaged, alert and active with us on this exciting session on family business. Like most of us on this panel, I also represent a legacy business. Kirloskar is more than 180 years old, and in of course, high-end engineering and manufacturing businesses. And a little later, and I think, Kulin, you mentioned diversity, expansion, changing, disruption. So about 27 years back, one side of the family, which was my late husband, we did a joint venture with Toyota Motor Corporation to set up a manufacturer of cars in India, but also 5 other joint ventures with the Toyota Group for auto components and textile machinery, material handling equipment, even insurance brokerage, and even a little hospital that I personally set up with the Japanese. So to that extent, there was a change of path, and then there was a change of ownership. This is also very common in family business as time moves on. You will find that within the same family group, as the group starts expanding, diversifying, globalizing and growing, you will find multiple pathways of the ownership model. and multiple models of the management model itself. So there is a certain complexity that enters a legacy business when many members of the family are spearheading many different product categories, many complex markets, and also when there is a level of disruption and diversification when a certain faction of the family takes that on. Then to move amongst these different business models within this large diversified group also becomes a huge challenge. How do you keep it all together? Having said that, let me emphasize and go back to the topic. Family business has been there and here to stay. In fact, if you look at it, right from the war, post-war, globalization, and then the jump back to nationalism, the pandemic, post-pandemic, one or two institutions have survived hundreds of years. Marriage is one of them. Family business is the other. You will agree. Just to throw some facts, I have this thing about always taking support of numbers because it always gives me confidence on my hypothesis. Family business, significant part of India's economy. More than around 85% of all incorporated businesses are family businesses. Price Waterhouse Global Family Business Survey 23 identifies some of these. They found that 83% of India's family business enterprises experienced substantial growth. 68% stating that expanding into new markets was a top priority, disruption was a priority, like you rightly said. At the same time, 49% had very clear strategies on how to reach these goals. Others seem to take support of outside consultants. 85% emphasized that they needed a clear ESG goal and are strongly working on it, and that is something Mr. Shriram began the conversation with. The Edelman Trust Barometer confirms that family business are trusted more than other companies. Their trust score is 12 points higher than that of enterprises. And Price Waterhouse found a very strong correlation between trust and profitability. It's interesting, isn't it? That's why I said sometimes facts help you to put forward your hypothesis. I personally believe that in any relationship, whether it is that with a joint venture partner or it is with multiple, today you have multiple shareholders in any business, but whether it's family or non-family, there are multiple stakeholders today. So it becomes very important to ensure that there is no trust deficit. And sometimes, unfortunately, family business, the members of the family are viewed with a certain amount of suspicion. From the investing community, because they wonder whether the priority to fill their pockets might go beyond the priority of what's good for business. For prospective employees seeking a career growth and a career opportunity in such companies, there is a little trust deficit on whether they'll be overtaken by different members of the family who are vying for an operating position, and hence would they ever reach the peak of the ladder there, or would they have to get trained there and then move on and switch on. The customer also wonders at some point whether the product that he receives has any vested interest in that of the owner, with prioritization of his personal profitability at the cost of the quality delivery to the customer. So there is always going to be that subconscious trust deficit, and numbers also show that trust is singularly the most important asset that a family business can own. I think at Kirloskar, and I realized that these values take centuries to develop. It is not something that you can do overnight. And when I mentor a lot of startups, this is exactly what I tell them. So the young startup, very bright children come to meet me, all between 17 to 35. And the one thing I tell them is, I come from a legacy business, and I said, I know you're about buying and selling and buying and selling and buying and selling, but try to integrate in your business model a certain value system. Perhaps you could learn it from successful legacy businesses such as all of us. And trust, I tell them, is very, very critical. It's a very, very critical asset. So it is very important, I feel, to carry that forward. Today we live in an era of globalization, and one of the ways forward would be joint ventures. Our model is now resting purely on the joint venture model. Now when a family business enters a joint venture with a multinational that is one of the largest in the world, so they have a certain level of principles, policies, systems and processes, then you are suddenly exposed to a largesse that is not your own. At that point, it becomes very important for the family to understand that you need to let go your ego. You need to let go certain management policies, principles, and ways of working that perhaps in the global arena might appear a bit archaic. And you need to disrupt even the way you behave and the way you think. And that is why it becomes very important to go back to the trust factor. Your joint venture partner must always feel that the trust deficit is not there. And it becomes very important. So from the legacy business perspective, we have to evolve, we have to grow, we have to be socially responsible, but at all times we must remember that when we are playing a game in the global field, we must remember that the trust deficit cannot exist, and we must bridge that gap consciously through various ways that we've all discussed at every step of the way. So that, like marriage, and I hope marriage as an institution continues, when we're here a few years later, the ownership business model will continue to form 85% of all incorporated businesses in India, and I believe the global trend is similar. It's also around 80-85%. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gitanjali. Thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts and ideas. Very educated. Veer, please. Most welcome.
I'm going to use the days to make sure that all our guests are awake for the afternoon, like you said, Gitanjali. I'm keeping an eye on everyone. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Veer Advani. Thank you for being with us today. I represent a company called Blue Star. We are probably the youngest company on this days here. We're 81 years old, so I have a long way to go and a lot to learn. 81. Very young, that's what I said. See, look at this. So with that, I'll jump into it. So I was asked by CII to talk about this topic. So frankly, my first reaction was that it is no different from what I would share for securing the future of any business in India. We're a $3 trillion economy, and we are on our way to become a $10 trillion economy. The opportunities are enormous, but one should not be complacent, because the competitive landscape is going to change dramatically. We're an open economy, and if us family businesses do not grab these opportunities, someone else will. So it goes without saying that family businesses will play a huge role in this exciting journey to $10 trillion. Many of you would perhaps know about the significant place that family businesses have worldwide. Gitanjali talked about India, but I'll throw some facts and figures about the global situation. 75% of all registered companies in the industrialized world are family businesses. 1/3 of Fortune 500 companies are owned by families. 70% of all firms in the UK are family owned. In Italy, out of the top 100 companies, 43 companies are family owned. And Gitanjali already told you about the statistics in India. And yet, we know that only 5% of family businesses survive through the third generation. So this is extremely important, because if we look at India, many of our family businesses were formed around the time of independence. Many of them are in their third generation. So what's been on my mind is that we're family businesses in the third generation. We're going from $3 trillion to $10 trillion. So are we actually talking about their survival, or are we talking about how they're going to thrive? So I thought I would throw some ideas, recommendations, thoughts on how these family businesses in India will actually thrive and not just survive. So I had 4 points. I think that there's a responsibility, firstly, to having very strong governance and succession planning. So at the heart of every successful family business are robust governance structures and meticulously crafted succession plans. The point to note is that most of us think about these frameworks only in the context of the board or the organization. I think the real need is to have strong governance and succession planning in the family structure itself. I think we have a lot to learn from the Japanese on this front. We can see multi-generational companies coming out of Japan even today, very successful. The second suggestion I have is that we must define the purpose of the organization. The family is responsible for defining the purpose. I believe that the management should define the vision, mission, and goals of the organization, but it's the family that should define the purpose of the organization. The family should focus on the why and not necessarily only the what. And the why should include both the organization's responsibility in the context of business, and also its role in a larger society. If the family fails to define the purpose of the organization, I think organizations may still be successful, but I think they'll only be successful for a finite amount of time. The third role of family is to balance legacy and innovation. Successful family businesses in India need to strike a delicate balance between honoring traditions, where traditional economy, a traditional society, and yet embrace innovation. While respecting the core values that define family legacy, these businesses need to be agile. I think the key to longevity is adaptability, and businesses need to prioritize digitalization, sustainability, even product innovation. And it is the family's role to adapt their strategies even at the cost of legacy. The fourth role of family to ensure longevity is to determine the risk profile of the organization. I think there is no right or wrong, but this is what will determine the growth mindset in the organization. And this will have a direct impact on its longevity. So in summary, I just want to share the role of family, according to me, goes far beyond just managing the company or the organization. And, but the good news, I think, when I talk to colleagues and in CII and outside, is that I think Indian families are taking this very seriously. They've taken their responsibilities seriously. And I really do believe that we're in a position to thrive and not just survive as we go and become a developed economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veer, for sharing your thoughts. And I think thrive instead of survive, I think, is very, very logical, how to look at the future for family businesses. Madhav, can I request you to please share your thoughts?
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Shriram. Firstly, I'd like to thank CII, Mr. Shriram, for having me here as a part of this panel. So I'm the youngest on this panel, but I represent a family which is 140 years old. So it's the JK organization, and personally I run JK Cement, which is also completing 50 years since inception. So, talking about family business, I think first I'll start with, I was introduced to FBN, which is actually the Family Business Network, which is a global network, one of the largest global networks for family businesses. In fact, CII is the official partner for FBN International in India, and it's called CII FBN. So a lot of you that may be coming from family businesses, I do recommend. It's a great platform to be a part of. And when you enter FBN, that's when you realize there are so many other families and family businesses that actually have gone through generations, have gone through similar situations that I think all of us, coming from family businesses, have gone through. And there's so much to learn in terms of how to maybe preserve that legacy and take it forward. Why should it end at 3 generations? How do you continue to maintain the same momentum forward? A lot of facts were put, just adding to some of those facts. Almost 79% of India's GDP also comes from family businesses. So it's quite a large number. Looking at family businesses, I feel it's a very interesting intersection of capitalism and socialism. Because if you look at business, it's run with the capitalistic mindset, wherein you have to be competitive, you have to be the best at what you do. And when you work on the family and keeping the family together, it's all about equality and how the socialistic ecosystem can be put in place so that the family is happy. And the intersection of capitalism and socialism is what actually makes the family business thrive. So in every business, there is the business side and there is the family side. And we always joke about it, but for a person to be happy at work, I think it's quite important that he's happy at home. And so in general, for a family business to thrive, it is necessary that the family is happy at home. It may not always work out the other way, but it will definitely work out in this manner. And you know, for people coming from family businesses, I think it's important that trust is built within the family. I think that is something which was emphasized, and I think it needs to continue to get emphasized, because it's the small misunderstandings at home which do lead to bigger complications at work. So as long as the communication at home is strong, a lot of families have worked in different manners, in terms that if you look at the business, it's governed by the board of directors of the company. But if you look at the family, typically it's governed by a family council. In a lot of cases in the Indian ecosystem, it's typically the patriarch of the family who may end up being the eldest. So it's important to involve the family members to build trust. You know, we heard Kulin spoke about evolving our own business. You know, we spoke about long term, we spoke about evolution in business. As a company, we started with, you know, we evolved out of the Swadeshi movement, wherein we started with a small textile mill in Kanpur. And, you know, given that it evolved from the Swadeshi movement, one of the key values, the values of the family actually form also the values of the business. So one of the key values always remained nation building. So in anything most families do, I think nation building ends up being one of the key aspects around it. When I say, so coming to evolution, we started with this Swadeshi movement, and then we moved to synthetic fiber, and today we are in cement. But you know, every family business, the flagship company may not be what you started off with. And which is why for a lot of us, which have been here so long, the business that we started off with is not the business which is keeping us going today. So it's important for every family business to keep in mind with changing times, in terms of what are the needs of society, people, the ecosystem in general. And lastly, on the value system, I feel it's extremely important for the value system to be passed down across generations. Just to give you an example, sir, I think for me personally, one of the times when I truly understood, you know, the value system was when I was invited for Founders Day. For us, it's a day where we celebrate, you know, the birth anniversary of our founder. And it's actually the day when the family interacts with people in the business. And we also get to felicitate some of the people who have contributed long term. In fact, I saw Mr. Mahindra doing it recently. There was a video which went viral around. And you see people who have spent 25 years, 40 years, 50 years of association with the family. And you wonder what is it that truly, you know, keeps them with the organization for so long. And it's actually the value system which comes from the family, which then gets imbibed in the business. So it's extremely important for the coming generations also to truly see and learn and believe how the ecosystem works. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madhav. Thank you. I'd like to thank all of you for sharing your thoughts. I think it's been very educative. This is like a management lesson on family management. I think the way we've got ideas and thoughts which have come in from really experienced people, that's really great. I've got a couple of questions which I thought I'll ask each of you, and then after that we'll open it to the floor. People have any questions, we'd be more than welcome to get your ideas and thoughts. Kulin, if I may start with you, how does one actually ensure that these family values are imbibed in the organization? How do you sort of ensure that people believe in it, people accept it, and they act on it? I think that's a challenge, especially when the organizations get larger. People are spread over geographically all over the place. How does one do that? What is your experience?
That's a great question. I think, you know, values are never going to be disseminated through value statements or pieces of paper. I think it's the actions and your priorities, the way you set priorities that help you drive the right kind of values in an organization. So I think even if I reflect on how we learnt our values, it was in a sense what we saw in the generations that have gone over the years it's how you grow up and you hear the stories of how, you know, say for example, I was always told when I was young, the idea of the value system of having high integrity. And the story that comes to my mind is when my grandfather would go to the office, even if he had to take the pen home, he would account for it. You know, that's the difference between how you can, you know, it's a small thing, right? But it kind of teaches you as a youngster that how important it is that the assets of the company versus the belongings of the family have to be defined very, very sharply. So it's those stories that in a sense helped me build my worldview, you know, on what values matter. And I think as business leaders, so we are a professionalized company. My great-grandfather professionalized Arvind in the 1950s. So we've had CEOs now for 70 years. I grew up with, you know, a complete professional management. Some of these CEOs were my mentors when I entered the business. I learned so much from them. And now, as we've spent more time in the business, my brother and I, and we are vice chairs, now our role has come to try and ensure that we live by example and we walk the talk, and that seeing us possibly inspires the professional management. And now the group is diversified, there are so many companies, so it becomes all the more important for the promoters to be the conscience keepers in the company, to be putting down the you know, through actions, the things that the group will and will not do. We've also been very particular about being in the kind of businesses where we feel our value systems align very well with those kind of businesses. We can drive them, you know, in the right way, not make any compromises in the way we feel businesses should act and behave. And we are hoping that by making it visible through action, we can ensure that this continues not only in the business, but more importantly also for the next generations to come, because they will also need to be ambassadors and propagate these thoughts and values in the generation.
Thank you. I think very, very valid points, Kulin. Thanks a lot for sharing that. Gitanjali, if I may ask you, you had talked about trust, and that's also very crucial. I think we all agree that that's absolutely essential. And one is trust within the company, but in your case with your group, you all have had to build strong trust with international companies where you don't interact day to day. And the transparency level can't be the same as it is if you're sitting in the same office. So how do you actually go about building these steps? What actions do you all take to ensure that the trust is built up with all the external stakeholders also, by the family and by executives? And how do these positive relationships affect the business? Appreciate getting your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Ajay. Yes, as I started by saying that there are many different business models today for family business. It's evolved, right? There's family run, there's family managed, and there's family enabled, and there's family business managed, run through equity and management participation leadership with multinational partners. Because in the global world, partnerships across are becoming very, very critical. When you have a situation like ours, I have actually straddled both. 180-year-old family business, which was in the traditional business into which I was married, that came with its own challenges, that's evolved into a very independent, successful business model on its own, which is both owned, run and managed by family largely. With, like Kulin rightly said, the support of very senior, very competent professionals. The other side is what we started independently 27 years ago, which was joint venture businesses. In the joint venture businesses also, obviously, in fact, even more so, trust becomes a very, very critical asset to build and drive and sustain the relationship and grow it. You don't want to just sustain it. You also want to grow it. You want to have another 10 joint ventures over a period of time, right? There it is a little more difficult because the partner has not been born along with you. He doesn't share your genetic history, right? He doesn't even share your language at times, or your food, or what you drink and how you live, or the clothes that you wear. So to that extent, you are dealing with diversity. Now to create a trust, even between two brothers and between mother and son or between father and son in a family business is a challenging, and it takes a lot of effort. It doesn't come naturally, especially in today's modern age when the temptation for greed overpasses any other commitment towards the business or the value. So there is an effort that you have to put in. Now, can you imagine when you're doing partnerships across the world and those are dominating partnerships, but you know that's good for the business, so you need to have them because you have that ambition to scale. In that situation, trust becomes even more challenging. But how do we communicate and sustain and build that trust? It's very simple. Once you decide with your partner on the management strategies, philosophy and policies of the business and the company, you must ensure that you align yourself to it in every action, word and deed that you do. Not a single word, because remember, here the sensitivities are more sensitive, more deep and more micro, because you don't have a genetic history. In genetic itself it's hard, so you can imagine how hard it is here. So you have to make sure that you personally align first yourself, me as an individual, or my daughter tomorrow, or my late husband did. You align yourself to all the agreed policies and practices. And second, very important, is what Kulin touched upon, is corporate governance. You cannot be seen or you cannot do any act in any manner which causes any kind of financial discrepancy or even implies a level of dishonesty. Very, very critical. So even in the personal life that you lead, you have to be careful that you pay your taxes. You cannot have your name out in the paper, or you cannot have a notice from the income tax department on your, suspecting or asking you to have paid or deviated from compliance in any manner. So we make sure that our family office first is highly compliant, so that at no point of time does the joint venture partner ever have any reason to hear or believe that either by reputation or by action, intentional or otherwise, error or otherwise, you have deviated from compliance even to. So we are actually so obsessed with personal and family office compliance for our partners that we spend a lot more money on engaging more company secretaries and lawyers and financial auditors, etc., a little excessively. So that you have to be careful of that. So this is really the way. And even in the decision-making process, you have to ensure that you take decisions in consensus, that you develop consensus in the manner and as per the policy and structure of your joint venture partner, to which you have agreed upon. That is what you have signed on. So the minute you sign on to that, you leave your ego behind, you look forward, and you make sure that you're transparent, and every little action moves towards that direction. So we had to always make sure that whatever decision we take, it's never taken in isolation. You see what happens in I'm talking about the traditional family business model. None of us on this panel follow that anymore because everybody has outgrown that. But in the very traditional family business, you get used to a business model that does rest finally on the decision making and policy formulations of individuals. And rightly so, but that's changed now. None of us here do that. In a joint venture with a multinational partner, you have to do that even more. You have to make sure that if there is any minor deviation or strategic differential in what you've already agreed upon, you build consensus with them, and you always share the thought with them as soon as it emerges on your mind. Over a period of time, you can take certain liberties, because the greatly beautiful thing about trust is, once it is set over a period of time, it has its own natural energy and it sustains. And then the level of detailed effort or obsession with or concern with, oh my God, am I deviating? Will I cause mistrust or suspicion with my partners in my working? That goes away automatically. Touch wood, we have had 27, 28 years, and what is the measure of that success? They come back to you with more partnerships. That is really the measure. I hope that's answered your question. Thank you.
Thanks, Gitanjali. I think you've had experience of trust and relationship in India and outside India, which I think is a great value addition. Veer, if I may ask you, because even though you said you are like maybe in terms of number of generations the youngest, but still 80 plus is pretty good going. So how does one work towards getting the next gen, even for you inducting into business from your father's generation? What were the sort of steps required? How does one do it smoothly so that there is alignment, there is consensus, and there is the learning for the next gen, which is important when you have to take up responsibility? How does that move? How was your experience?
rocky, complicated, difficult, but lovely. No, but no. In all seriousness, I think that the way I look at it is that there's a role for everyone in the family, and the roles need not be the same. The way I see it is that you may have some family members who are capable of operating roles. There are some who are capable of board roles. There are some who are capable of just playing an investor role. All roles are very important and critical to the organization. What is important is that that sense of ownership and engagement needs to flow through the entire family. I think that's what binds and ensures longevity. One, I think the role of our prior generations has been to identify which family members should play an operating role, a board role, or an investor role, and guide them through that. I think that guidance is very important, because if you get the right family members in the right position, I think that is what will really give a long-lasting benefit to the organization. So I think as I look at it, I'm third generation, and we don't have any fourth generation family members in the business yet. But as I look at my role and forward, maybe 5, 7, 10 years from now, I would see that as being a very critical role that I would play for my family, to help identify who should play what role. And if and when anyone of the family wants to play an operating role, I think that has to be handled very carefully and with a great deal of nuance. And again, it is the older generation that should play that very vital role to ensure that when someone puts up their hand and says that they would like to play an operating role, to then craft a very careful career path, if you will, for them. I have been through that. I put up my hand 25 years ago and said I would like to play an operating role, and my father and uncle helped me do that. So I hope, I presume others on this panel would have gone through similar experiences, and maybe some others in the audience would have experienced that as well. Yeah, thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you. I think that's very educative, of bringing about a level of transparency and actually asking the younger generation what they want. You know, that very often doesn't happen by the senior generation. So I think that's a great direction of it that you'd like to take. Madhav, if I may ask you, that even though you are among the youngest here, as you rightly said, but still, I think the way your group has moved over the last many years, how do you get alignment on the vision-making exercise for the group? How do you sort of get about and convince the various generations where we should go ahead? If someone comes with a new idea, how does it work? How is it evaluated? How is it discussed, debated? And how do you get alignment for the visioning for the group for the next 20, 30 years? Because I think family businesses do look at the long term. So how do you all and your group do that? And you personally, how do you get into that?
No, so sir, it's a great question. I'll answer that keeping in mind, I'll just give two perspectives. The first being, so I'm a sixth generation. In our family, anyone who actually is a descendant of JK can use the JK name, and thankfully whoever has used the JK brand has done so with trust and quality and delivery. So that has been the good part. As far as family visioning is concerned, I feel it's important that people sit together and they actually discuss in terms of the direction they would like to go to. So there is one is the business vision, which somewhere does come from the board of the business, and it's important that family businesses kind of are able to distinguish between the business vision and the family vision. So somewhere each family business has a business which has its own vision of growth, its own vision of market share, its own vision of where it would like to stand, and that clear vision needs to be executed by maybe family members who are already a part of that business or the professional team that is running the business. The reason family businesses are also very successful is because growth in the family also leads to growth in business. So it's actually an additional family member coming in who puts up his hand saying that maybe I want to start this. To which the family may then say that, yes, it's a great idea, we are ready to incubate your idea as a startup and see how it goes. So in terms of visioning, I would say the family vision, if there is a person who puts up a hand to want to do something, I would say to a large extent the family ends up supporting it. And otherwise, from a vision standpoint, I think it's very important that the values of the family are preserved across generations. So that's how I would answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. I think that's very logical, the way to go about it. I think we have about 5-7 minutes left. I was going to ask any questions from the audience. We'd like to. Oh my God, that's good to see the amount of passion, interest. But we don't. But we'll have to restrict it to somewhat. I think I saw your hand first. Please go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Sir, my name is Vinod Jain, Chartered Accountant. We actually help people in succession planning and managing this whole thing which you are talking. Which is the biggest problem which we feel families are facing now is that their next generation do not want to join the family business. How do you handle that? Is it what we have learned from our experiences that unless you feel great about your business, your successors are not going to join it. So that is one thing which we keep on suggesting people. We want to listen from stalwarts of this country.
Anyone? Whoever's keen to answer that, please go ahead. Anybody?
I think all I'd say is it's important to give them that exposure from the beginning and try and involve them at a young age to see the importance that the business creates on not just the family but the entire ecosystem and the amount of families that may be dependent on the business. And then it brings perspective at an early age wherein a lot of family members then are willing to come back and be a part of it.
I'd like to just add one thing on what Madhav said. I think it's important to never force the next generation to join a business. I think it's our job to give the exposure, and if the inspiration comes, the next gen can join, but you must give full opportunity to be an owner and not a manager. I think ownership is a given, but management has to be something which has to have capability and hunger. If the two are missing, then you cannot force management into the next generation. So that's at least how we think in our family.
Briefly, please go ahead, but briefly. Go ahead, because we have a lot of... Go ahead, please.
I wanted to say very quickly that I think it's very important to let the kids do what they want. If they want to be musicians and dance on the street, if that gives them joy, fine, but you have to remind them they have to earn their money. That should give them the next meal. So you educate... and you educate them and, let them understand. You educate and you enable them. And then like the Ford family, you sit on the board of trustees and let the professionals run and give you the dividend, But I do believe that the kids should have their own, decide whatever they want to do. And that needs to be built in, sir, into the business model when you advise your families. Tell them from now only start building it into the model, so that it's not something that they have to face like a crisis management situation. So the thinking has to be modified.
Thank you. Please, go ahead.
Sir, my name is Sanjay Kumar, and I'm the founder and CEO of one of the consulting organizations known as the Total People Productivity. In last 36 years, I have worked with more than 200 organizations, including Charatram ji ke. Lala ji ki, Charatram ji ki, really I get into that. I learn from that, Sriram Pistons and all. See, out of 200 organizations, I have seen 50 organizations have failed or could not succeed. Because after 25 years, even the Chantal, I'll not name the company, sorry, I'll not name the company. I can see Naresh Goyal ji and all, so many things I see that. After 25 years, when the first generation to second generation it migrates, there are 3 types of things. Either sustain or scale up and falls down. So a lot of things happen. My question goes to all that. What was the one key things you really hold it very close to your heart, कि मुझे तो ये करना ही है. And that made you a success mantra of that part. My question goes to that part. What was the one key things, whenever you really took over the things from the generations, you hold it very close to your heart and made it to succeed? That's questions. Thank you.
Well, I'll mention what to me, we are talking about it. I think the biggest issue for success of any organization is people. Having the right person for the right job at the right time. I think that is the job of top management. And then how to motivate them, how to encourage them, give them freedom, but checks and balances are essential. To give an example, I've told our audit committee chairman, I said, please be very strict. Please get into detail. Because I want to make sure that we don't have the headache as managing directors of having something happening which we didn't know about. And secondly, to be very honest, we are the largest shareholders. So if the company is run in a transparent, clear way, with good controls, tight controls, as shareholders we are beneficiaries. So I think people is the key for any organization.
In fact,
Yeah. Okay, I think we will have to move to, I think gentleman there in that, aap kariye. Sorry? Yeah. Please.
So first of all, thank you for a very enlightening session. I have just a quick question. Now assume that at a certain point of time, you have 3-4 members who are looking for the same designation. So how you then bifurcated who should be the next, like for example in your cases the next generation comes into the picture, and how you will decide that who is the one who will be getting the responsibility if there are 3 or 4 hands coming upside. How you will take a decision on that? Thank you.
What if it's none of them? It may be none of them, no?
But let's assume that there are 3-4 conditions, because that's
Okay.
what.
Again, I'm saying that is from the very start. I'm saying your entire approach today has to be may the best man win the seat. So that is a culture that you bring in from day one. You
Man
hope
or
that
woman? Man or woman?
I would say woman any day, in any case. Woman, then man, any day. But the point is, this should be a culture, this should be your policy and strategy right from day one. If it's not, then you need to change it. So everyone must understand in the family, it's the best man for the seat, otherwise they will not have their money in 5 years. So hopefully this problem doesn't arise. But I think where it does, there are consultants now who step in and work on this, no?
Yeah. You're right. I think you have to get input to see the competence. I think the competence is very important. It can't be just because you're the son or daughter of a family member that you automatically have a right. In today's world, the right does not work, and it should not work. I think that's...
Also, one thing I'd like to add is that sometimes you can also plan for structure. So, for example, if you have structured your business where there is a lot of dividend income which comes out, you can give people opportunities to start new things. My father, when he created a diversification, he created almost 7 different lines of business. So my brother and I have never had to be the leader of the same line of business. We have had space to develop businesses with our own styles and our own ways of... So beyond meritocracy, which is very critical, I think nobody should be a manager without capability. The other is structure. If you have a little flexibility in the family structure and the way the overall cash flows are created, you have more opportunities to give to the next generation.
There's someone else at the back. The lady there. Lady at the back, please. Can you give her a mic? Please.
My name is Seema Sutradhar. I am the co-founder and co-CEO of a sustainability consulting and RegTech company, SEAM. My question to the panel is, we talk about purpose in family business, and today CSR and ESG are not exactly 2 separate things, but it's just a change in the perspective that we need to bring in. So I would like to hear your comments on how do you see that other than family business, purpose actually gets incorporated across all entities, and we see that ESG is about creating positive impacts across stakeholders through their products and services, and not seen as a CSR. CSR is good to do, but bringing that multi-stakeholder focus and creating that impacts that can be measured as ESG is the right way to go.
Okay, thanks.
So I want to hear their perspective about incorporating.
Veer, please.
Yeah, sure. So in our case, we are a heating, air conditioning and refrigeration company, and so sustainability for us is very different from CSR. So CSR objectives are completely independent, whereas our sustainability goals are our purpose. So that's and perhaps an extreme example given the industry in which we operate. But if I was to even come back to a regular business, I think that when a family is defining the purpose of the organization, I'm almost certain it'll be done both for the business itself as well as for the social good that they intend to deliver. So I would see a big commonality overlap between the two. Just in our case, they're significantly different.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. I think one more. Gentleman standing there with that, with the red tie. Please. I think second last question.
Good afternoon. Thank you. This is Vivek Piti of Harinagar Sugar Mills. Just one, someone mentioned about new ideas coming and being discussed in the family. So very often we have seen that where there are little larger members in the family, when some new idea comes in and it is genuinely felt that it is not in the interests of the organization, then sometimes egos come into play that my idea was struck down. Why is that person's idea was worse than mine, but it was taken up. And so these practical problems do come in, and sometimes you have to compromise on the decision, so in the interest of family harmony. I would like to have your views on that.
Anybody?
See, sometimes consensus-based decision making may not always be the best decision making. So, so my point here is that it's the best way is to build trust and communicate. And if you're able to do that effectively as a family, then you will be able to at least have the opportunity to eliminate such a problem from arising. However, the problem you mentioned, I think there are many families which face these issues, and the ones that are not able to solve them, then disputes arise. So I think there are many mechanisms also now available wherein the family can be brought together to try and see how the best decision making can take place.
Please, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to make a point that when you are in a family, compromise is a way of life. We can say it whichever way we want. There's no sugarcoating it. There will always be some personal ambitions you may have to let go, because there will be, as was mentioned before, you need a family strategy. That strategy will have a certain risk appetite. Now, a young person always has a very high risk appetite. If I look at myself 15 years ago, I had a different risk appetite than maybe I have today, and my father would have a different risk appetite. So there will always be compromise. And I think if you want family unity, how do you manage compromise? How does that family cohesion and trust overcome some of these trade-offs which you have to do? You have to keep the integration and the love of the family has to allow you to make those compromises and live with them and truly accept them.
I'll just add the last point is that, ultimately, end of the day, any business proposition anyone brings must have a business logic. So we've also said in our family, if anyone has any ideas, please make out a case as to why should the company or the family office take it up. There must be a logic and a rationale. It must be a good business proposition. It's not a hobby. You can't spend family money or company money as a hobby. There has to be a logic, reason, and the passion to really carry it through then for the next 5, 7, 10 years, whatever it is. So it is a debatable point, but that's another angle of the business logic of any investment proposal. I think that's all. Last question was, the gentleman in the white shirt. Sorry, we've...
Thanks for giving me the opportunity for, the last question. Myself, Amit Jain, and I am a chartered accountant and investor as well. So I just want to ask a simple question from all the jury. Basically, we are, all the members, you are basically all running the family businesses and all are inculcating such a high values. So to manage that, heritage of your business, legacy of your businesses. So what actually you people are doing to inculcate those values in your next generation or the kids? You are following any spiritual things, or what exactly you are giving and trying to inculcate those values in your kids to take over to the next level? I want to ask this question from Gitanjali as well as to the Madhav.
मैं तो अभी next generation ही हूँ. तो आप
No,
यही
no.
क्वेश्चन
Listen to me. He is so effectively. He's positioned me as the older generation.
Please ask Madhav how old he is, because it's come up about 8 times
No.
today.
I have
We're all
already.
feeling
I have
terrible.
already asked him. He's the same age as my daughter, so he's fine. You let him say. It's okay. Doesn't matter. You know, you live by example. That is the best way to communicate with you. If you get didactic with the next generation, and if they see a dissonance between the words and your action, then there's no way they're going to follow it. You know, so that's all. A very simple answer. I want to tell you one quickly. There's a very famous vineyard in Italy, Antinori. And they are in this, they are, I think, 27th. I just looked at the internet to know because I went there. 27th generation from the 14th century. Family run business. And do you know how they build a passion? Kulin spoke about you inculcate a sense of passion about the product, company from day one. They make the little kids taste the wine that they produce from the age of 7. So they were telling me how they grew up on sips of wine. And they said, we just love this wine. So we are always going to work here to make sure this is the best bottle in the world. I hope that gives you a laugh for the day.
Wonderful. A wonderful experience. Ladies and gentlemen, it's so good to see so much interest and passion from all of you on our session today, but unfortunately time is running out. It is 1:30 plus, so I think we'll have to close the session today. So on behalf of all of you and personally my behalf too, thank you very much to all our four eminent panelists.
Thank you.
Who shared their thoughts and ideas so openly in a transparent way, which I think is a great education to all. Thank you so much once again. Great job.
Thank you very much, Ajay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, hello. Thank you, speakers, for a very enriching discussion. May I now request Mr. Ajay Shri Ram to hand over a token to appreciation to the panelists, please. Mr. Kulin Lalbhai. Mr. Madhav Krishna Singhania. Mr. Veer Advani. Ms. Gitanjali Kiloskar. I would also like to request Ms. Gitanjali Kiloskar to hand over a token to Mr. Ajay Sriram, please.
You know, you did the right thing in making me hand over because it's a 4-generation friendship between our families.
With this, we come to close of this session. Thank you once again, everyone, for participating.
That is almost impossible.
working with India